Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I'm going to react to a not very short, but to a video clip that is been released from an Alex Karp interview with one of the founders of Palantir. And by the way, I know that guy looks old and talks very slow, but he's very legit. He's a very well-known investor, has been the lead investor of the Quantum Fund, that is George Soros's foundation. And whatever you might think about that guy, to be the lead investor in his investment fund has to mean that you know what you're doing. And I love the fact that these type of guys are, diamond handing Palantir. And as I said in many videos, if these guys are selling Palantir, I get worried. If YouTubers sell Palantir and non-engineers sell Palantir, I don't give an F. So this interview reveals key data about Palantir's future. I think every Palantir investor needs to see this. I'm going to link the full interview in the description box below, but I think this was one of the most important parts. And as always, if you like this content, please make sure you subscribe. And if you want to go further, check out our Patreon link where you can get direct access to me and to all the valuations that we use on this channel. And you support the channel and you help a European out so that I can pay my electricity bills and don't freeze this winter. So let's begin this video.
Brewing issues when you get the price of oil doing what it's doing historically, and when you get interest rates doing what they're doing historically, and it becomes a global phenomenon with tightening liquidity, and you've got war, the odds of a global recession and a change in the macroeconomy are about as high and as severe as I've seen them in decades. Three questions. Are you seeing any sign of that in your commercial enterprise business?
Super good questions. So these are the questions that the stupid Wall Street analysts are not asking, and we as shareholders want to know. So look at these questions. These are the exact questions that we want to know. Is your company slowing down because of the current situation
in the United States? B, are you seeing it treated differently in Europe because they're dealing with gas prices? They're down a little the last couple of weeks, but the equivalent of like $300 oil. And three, what does it mean for Palantir where we get a recession, in other words, a bad economic environment globally, but with all this crazy geopolitical stuff going on at the same time?
Yeah, so the crazy weird thing about Palantir is we are heavily diversified by geography historically. Now, one of the dangerous things for Palantir is just how well we're doing in America. So we went from a business that was majority outside of America in 2019 to a business that in 2 years will be 70% US based.
Wait, you went from... I'm supposed to know this, I'm an investor. You went from less than half in America to 70% in 2 years.
In 2 years from now, we will be a 70% U.S. business.
And will that increase come more from government or commercial?
The commercial business has been doubling every year. This year, if you include Canada, it might double, but it went from a small integral 50 to 100 to 200, and now and this is, by the way, ex-SPAC. So it's not being driven by inorganic revenue. The U.S. business crossed the $1 billion mark alone this year. So this is a big milestone. First, we crossed the $1 billion mark as a company, and then the U.S. business has grown 61% annually, so CAGR, the last 3 years, from like just under $300 million business to $1 billion business, LTM, so the last 12 months. So it's like this is like the interesting question for Palantir is what the fuck is going on in the U.S.? Why is this business?
It's the 12-year-olds.
It's the 12-year-olds. But
so super good. So this is super good sign for Q3, Q4, and the direction of the company. And notice that it's so funny when you watch YouTube and you watch the Q2 earnings. Everybody was like, they suck in Europe, and it's so bad. And his viewpoint was like, why are we doing so good in the US? And you're going to see that, as I explained and suspected in my videos, that Europe was also not doing bad, but the US dollar, I'm a European, the US dollar has become so effing expensive lately, you Americans cannot imagine. So if you ever wanted to come to EU on vacation, now is the time to draw your credit cards and just come and see Europe for yourself because it's so goddamn cheap. I allow you to do that as an investor. Take on credit cards and do your dream vacation.
And so the general thing is there's these macro conditions. I think obviously in many ways the U.S. on energy and other things is better positioned than Europe. But the key difference for us is how do cultures respond to certain exogenous pressures, and what, for all the things that look weird outside to people looking into the U.S., what is amazing about the U.S. is the adaptive ability of U.S. companies and U.S. institutions. Obviously, some things take too long, and there are things that we don't like, and they're corrosive. We sued the U.S. government twice because of what we thought was unfair practices, and there's a lot. But the U.S., we came with kind of products that, first with PG, which was a way of modeling data and a way of doing it where you could segment the data and still find people who are doing bad things. And then with Foundry, which is a completely antithetical to the market way of approaching software. And so instead of selling a sliver of a piece of software with literally 5 to 10 salespeople per half of engineer you have that probably couldn't get a job at Palantir.
I think he was ripping on Snowflake here. So you remember he said 5-6 salespeople per one engineer. And if you go to Snowflake's website, they literally have, I think it was 6,000 employees, and 3,000 of them is working on sales. And probably another 1,000 to 2,000 is working on HR and other things, and probably only the rest is engineers. So it's good to listen to this part.
We led with an engineer focus and went for the full value proposition. But in any case, leaving that aside, this was something that every single analyst, every single person who's tasked with understanding the markets, so the VC community, the academic community, said no one would ever buy. And America is quite willing to say, yeah, we wouldn't have bought that yesterday. We might not buy it today, but we'll look at it and then we'll quickly adapt and begin buying it. And what's also interesting about America, just at a more micro level, is in every other culture in the world, when you sell, you get a niche. So you say software for automotive, software for oil and gas. In fact, we're doing that. In America, by and large, people are like, we just want to see if this will work for us. So there's people are very willing to adapt to what works for them, independent of legitimacy criteria from other things. And from people that they don't normally know or would not interact with. So there's that part, just as a structural thing, is very advantageous for us, particularly in America. Less advantageous for, a lot of companies adjust for dollar because super strong and make excuses. But in reality, Europe is weaker for us than in America, even though if you adjust it for dollar, it's still by normal standards 25% or in the high above 20 and perhaps even 30%. But what is the
And he's, by the way, correct on this. You just have to look at the euro-dollar price change. And I was saying it in previous videos that when people were flipping out on YouTube that Europe was only expanding 6% per year, if you factor in how much the dollar went out, they were charging the customers more, but the dollar was going up faster. So in essence, Palantir didn't make more dollar income and their bookkeeping is in dollars. But it's very important to understand that Palantir is still retaining the customers, increasing their revenue per customer, and it's still almost 30% growth, which is not bad, but in the US, they're doing fantastic.
Now, what's very good for us in general on the macro conditions, including outside of America, is this energy crisis, inflation, geopolitical turmoil will break your internal IT system. And in fact, what is driving our sales outside of America is simply that if you're a large manufacturer and all of a sudden you have to repurpose where you're building your pumps because you can't get them from Ukraine, and maybe you believe things you could purchase in China you won't be able to supply to the U.S. market. So most European companies have two basic markets, U.S. and China, and they're worried that in the near future you will have to build a product that doesn't have supplies from the other. So that's a massive overhauling of your operational infrastructure. And because it's a low legitimacy environment, you're going to have to show bureaucrats in both countries exactly where the products came from visually. And that completely maps into this vertical and horizontal integration problem that maps towards a disjoined set of geopolitical conditions where people don't trust each other.
So basically what he said, Palantir is alive and well, doing fantastic in the US. And I did videos about this, both also on the government and the commercial, that, you know, people are flipping out that the government has slowed down. And they have a very good excuse on the government slowing down. And that is simply that the government is not awarding contracts. And if you look at all the defense stocks, all the other ones, they are also not getting contracts. So it's not a Palantir problem, it's a general government problem. But because they're growing so freaking well in the commercial, I showed you in a video that after 3 or 4 years from now, the commercial would be such a great part of Palantir that the government wouldn't matter anyways. And he's basically saying that the business sector is doing fantastic in the US, maybe even 100% if you include Canada without the spec, so 100% organic. And he detailedly explained that the companies in this deglobalizing world, post-Russia, Ukraine, you know, post-COVID world, their IT systems simply cannot handle the challenges that are coming. So they have a very nice headwind there. And guys, when he speaks like this, do you get the idea that this is a company that is doing bad? This is what investment opportunity looks like, in my opinion, when you have a company that is doing good and the stock price going straight down the rabbit hole. And by the way, today we're up almost, what is it? 5.11%. So congratulations for people who bought here, and for the people who dollar cost average. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the subscription link below or the Patreon link, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.